Hi, how's it going? Hello, thanks so much for coming to the Windows Subsystem for Linux, your enterprise-ready multi-tool to run both Windows and Linux simultaneously session here at Ignite. My name is Craig Loewen. I'm a senior product manager at Microsoft working directly on the Windows Subsystem for Linux, as well as developer experiences. Let me pull up our camera for those who are viewing online so that they can see us as well. And I'm joined today by Pierre.
Hello, my name is Pierre Boulay. I am a developer on the Linux on Windows team at Microsoft, and I work on WSL.
Awesome. And we're going to switch back to the slides. See you online, folks. And talk about today. Our goal is for you to walk out of this session with an understanding of what is WSL used for, what are the latest improvements for IT admins as well as for users, how you can use it in your enterprise, and some new and cool announcements. So let's jump into it. First goal is, hey, some of you might not know exactly what the Windows Subsystem for Linux looks like when you're actually using it. What does the day in the life of a WSL dev look like? And what are some of the features that are prominent in WSL compared to some other pieces of tech? So I'm here on my desktop, and I'm going to open up Windows Terminal. And you can see that I have PowerShell here on the top, but I also have Ubuntu running in a separate tab. So I can go to this drop-down, and I can select Ubuntu, and I can even select different versions of Ubuntu and run different Linux distributions right here on Windows. And when I open that, I get a full Linux prompt. And this is actually Linux. This is real Linux that's running here. You can tell because I'm running Python 3, and it detects my platform as Linux. So I'm able to match exactly my production environment locally here on my machine. And where WSL really shines is I can do things like run gedit, for example. Gedit is a Linux graphical app that looks like this. And you will notice the lovely GTK tiling on the top. And I can go ahead and interact with this Linux app just as I would any other app. And when I go down to the taskbar, they have the icon here, as well as with the penguin on the bottom right, denoting this is running in Linux. And so the advantage that WSL has is that everything is incredibly integrated. That looked just like a Windows app. In fact, it's using the same renderer as Windows apps through remote desktop protocol. And we've done a lot of work to make it as seamless as possible. That includes accessing things like your Windows drive, for example. And I can even go ahead and run something like PowerShell.exe/c start. That is going to open up File Explorer, and you'll notice that it is in my Linux folder. So I am looking at Windows File Explorer, looking at Linux files, and you can see that denoted here as well. And let's do something really fun, because we're all technical people. And so I'm going to run TTY. That's going to tell me what teletypewriter I have. So this is a kind of like a pointer to my terminal. And I can go to my Ubuntu root. I'm going to go to the devices folder in my Linux home, and I'm going to go to PTS, and I'm going to find that exact TTY file. I'm going to open it up with Notepad on Windows. And so just to be clear, this is a device file in Linux that I'm opening with Notepad on Windows. And let's move everything just so I can see. When I type something like hello world from Windows Notepad and save this, it will actually write it to the screen inside of my terminal. So this is a really kind of convoluted and cute demo to show that it's a very powerful tool that lets you interact with Linux in actually quite complicated and really interesting ways. So let's jump back to the slides and start talking about some of the latest announcements and feature setups inside of the Windows Subsystem for Linux. So one of the first things we want to talk about is how you can use WSL in your enterprise. The Windows Subsystem for Linux is built on zero trust principles, and it is something that we are continuing to do. And so we have announced Microsoft Defender for Endpoint integration. You can monitor everything that's running in WSL with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and you can respond to security events using that tool. As well, you can manage WSL in your enterprise by setting settings to enable or disable it, and also its key security settings. You can do this through Intune or group policy. Both are supported. And we also have networking support ability, so you can configure networking rules specifically for WSL. But by default on Windows 11, all of your networking rules on Windows will just automatically apply to your Linux instances as well. So you just get that for free as part of using Windows 11. And we want to talk about 2 new announcements today to this set of features. The first is Microsoft Entra ID integration. So WSL is integrating with Entra ID to make it easier to manage authentication between Linux and Windows. And the second is Intune integration to manage WSL distributions. So let's jump into a recorded demo of that. Since we're going to be working with machine compliance, we decided to pre-record this one. And I'm here on my Intune dashboard. I'm going to create a new policy for Windows 10 and later. And when I go and just name this and go to compliance settings, you'll notice that there is a Windows Subsystem for Linux option here that we've added. And once I click this, I can expand it and include distributions that I would like to allow inside of my organization. And so in this case, I've set Ubuntu with a minimum version of 22.04 and a max of 24.04 allowed in my organization. And I've configured Debian, and I'm not going to configure an optional value, so any version is allowed. And now that I've configured these and hit next, I'm going to assign it to a specific group. So I have a group of pilot group of users. These could be your WSL users in your enterprise. And I'm going to assign it and create that rule for them. And so now we've switched to that device. So I'm on a machine, an end client machine, where WSL is installed. And I'm going to list my distros. In this case, I've installed a bunch of awesome Linux distros like Kali Linux and Ubuntu 20.04. But these 2 particular distros are ones that are not in my allow list that I set earlier. And so when I go and check for compliance manually, this also happens automatically as part of Intune. When I check for that, then it says, hey, you don't have access to company resources. And we get this error message right here saying these 2 distros are making you non-compliant on this machine. So now we've been able to protect the machine based on distro reported versions. And as a user, I can go, oh, OK, I'm only allowed these certain versions. Let me go fix myself. So I can go back to terminal, unregister those specific distributions, and then once done, hit check for access again, and get full access to company resources once again, kind of restoring it back to the accepted state inside of this script. So let's take a look into how that actually works behind the scenes. So this is the architecture diagram of what's going on. The main thing to take a look at is we have the Windows operating system as the big box. Inside of that, we have WSL service.exe. That is what creates your WSL virtual machine and the distros inside of it. And then on Windows, we also have the Intune agent, which communicates to an online source, the Microsoft Intune service. And the magic sauce that really powers this experience is a new feature you've added to WSL called WSL plugins. These allow applications on Windows to plug into the WSL process and get specific information from distros and interact with them. So in this case, the Intune agent creates a plugin for WSL, and that plugin can read what are the distro names and versions that are installed inside of this WSL instance. And then that plugin, what it does is it sets registry keys in your Windows registry to say, hey, I found this distribution that's not in the allow list that I received, and I've marked that to show that this computer is non-compliant. It reports that to your Intune agent on your machine, which is reported online, giving you conditional access or not. And so that's an overview of our first announcement of the Intune integration. Let's jump ahead and talk to Entra ID integration with WSL. And I really want to start with the architecture diagram for this first, because it's the same diagram. We have the exact same Windows with WSL service.exe, we have Intune running on Windows, and we have your distros with some applications running inside of them. So how did we integrate with Entra ID, and what does that buy you as an IT admin or as an end user? Well, we have a plugin as well for Entra ID that is able to go and interact with your distros. And what it does is it makes all of your token requests from Linux go through Windows. So you can use your Windows stack to get all of your authentication. That means as an end user, if I'm already authenticated in Windows, I don't have to re-authenticate again in Linux. And as an IT admin, if I have strong authentication and I'm already secure in Windows, that flows into Linux. And if I disable access to resources on Windows, that automatically flows into Linux as well. I'm disabling access into Linux inside of WSL. So let's talk about an example. What we actually did is we built an Entra bridge inside of the Linux process for 𝗦𝗲𝗀, the Microsoft Authentication Library. And so let's say that Edge from Debian says, hey, I would like a token, please, to access this resource. The Entra bridge would then handle this request. It says, I know I'm in the Windows subsystem for Linux. I'm going to go talk to the web account manager on Windows and ask it for a token. And on Windows, you can grab this from various sources like Entra ID Online, the token cache. In this case, we're going to grab it from 𝗦𝗀𝗀, and it routes all the way back into your Linux distribution to your process. So the end result is Windows is compliant, and your Linux distributions are compliant as well. So let's take a look at that inside of a demo, as well, a pre-recorded demo as we're talking about sensitive tokens. We have some live demos later. But in this case, I'm assuming the role of a developer inside of an enterprise, building a line of business app. And I'm going to make my Linux app grab authentication from Windows. And so I go ahead and just write Linux code. This is all totally running in Linux. You can see the Ubuntu on the bottom left. I'm going to run my Python file. We speed up as we enter some debug information. And then I get this acquire token interactive via broker call, we hit a breakpoint for. Once I hit this breakpoint and hit play, you'll see that we get the Windows UI to authenticate. So we're actually, as a user, that means everything's just the same. We're grabbing authentication from the same place. And also as an IT admin, simplifies your life as well. Grab the authentication from Windows, and it all ferries back into Linux just as easily as that. And so this is now something that's in private preview, and then we're working its way out to go and be a default experience inside of the future. But what about the end user experience? Well, if you've ever used the Windows Subsystem for Linux, you might have hit this experience where I type in git clone, my ADO repo, and ask me for my username. But I'm already logged in on Windows. I would want that to just automatically go over. Well, now if I hit git clone once this is enabled, I will just automatically be able to do that because I'm already authenticated. We know that from Windows, and we can grab and bring that over into Linux automatically. So this is something we're really excited about and interested to hear your feedback on. We'll have links on the end of how you can participate in this. And we have more exciting news about distributions in WSL and how we are adding a new architecture. Pierre, do you want to tell us all about it?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Craig. So today I want to talk about a new way to do distribution management in WSL. This is what we call tar-based WSL distributions. So we're going to see how this works, how it can be used, and how it's going to significantly improve the user experience for IT admins, for distribution maintainers, and ultimately for the end user. But before talking about the new things, let's talk about how distribution management currently works in WSL. So we're going to talk about the current infrastructure for WSL distribution management. This is what we call the MSIX infrastructure. So here we have a command line that is what you would use to install Ubuntu on WSL. So that would be WSL-install Ubuntu. And let's say that you execute this command in a previous infrastructure, MSIX. So this command would be picked up by WSL.exe. And the first thing that WSL.exe would do would be to look up the distribution manifest. So this manifest is something we'll get back to later, but essentially it's a list of all the distributions that are available for install with WSL-install. And it contains a bunch of metadata about the architecture, the name, the version, and such. And here we're going to use this manifest to get information about the Windows app that contains the distribution. And we're going to give this information to the Microsoft Store. And the Microsoft Store is going to download an MSIX application, which is a modern application package. And inside that package, we have two files that are important for our use case. So we have the install.tar.jz. This is essentially an archive that contains the root file system of the distribution. So it's essentially all the executable, configuration file, and such for the distribution to function. And then we have what we call the entry points. So this is what ubuntu.exe is. And this is an executable that once the application is installed, WSL is going to call into this entry point. And this ubuntu.exe is then going to load a library, 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗸𝗻𝗃, which is a Windows library that we use to connect distribution applications with the WSL service, which is what manages the state of the Linux virtual machine and is essentially capable of deploying the distribution on the virtual disk and run it later. So again, this is the previous infrastructure, the MSIX infrastructure, and when we look at this, we can see that there's quite a lot of agents, that there's kind of a long pipeline between the WSL.exe and the actual Linux virtual machine, and we can also say that this is about a Linux distribution, but if you're a distribution maintainer, this design kind of implies that you have to create a store registration, you have to create an executable, you have to call into the 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗸𝗃, and all of that is quite a bit of work. So let's see how that changes with the new infrastructure, the tar format. So we're going to see what happens if we run the exact same command line with a tar-based WSL distribution. So when we do that, we still invoke the WSL.exe, which is going to look up at the manifest again. But the difference is that the manifest directly contains a link to the distribution tarball. So here, we are able to directly download the distribution root file system from the WSL.exe, and then we can pass that through to the WSL service.exe, which will then connect with the Linux virtual machine, extract the distribution, and run it. So we can see that this is much simpler, and from a perspective of a distribution maintainer, the most important part is that you can ship a Linux distribution with Linux code only. There is no more requirement for a store registration or integrating with Windows libraries. A tar file is all you need to create a WSL distribution with tar-based distributions.
So if you're like an IT admin or someone like that and you create your own distro for your enterprise, it just got a lot easier, right?
Yeah, you just need the tar file, no Apex application, no store management. Like this becomes just one file which contains all of the metadata required for WSL to run and configure distribution. We'll get back to that later. So let's look a bit at what's actually inside this distribution manifest. And let's look at what was in the MSIX distribution manifest. So this is essentially a JSON file that we host on GitHub that distribution maintainers can do pull requests to add new distributions or make changes. And it's just a list of everything that the WSL-install supports. So the key things to look at are the name, which is what we use to match the distribution name and figure out which one to install. We also have the store app ID and the modern MSIX package family name, which is what we use to know whether the app is installed or not. And when we look at this, we can see that this is kind of centered around the idea of a store app registration. And so this is something that we've changed in the new manifest format. So this new format is designed to work with the new tar-based infrastructure. And here we've organized distributions as in a list of versions. So for instance, here we have the versions of Debian and Ubuntu that are available. And we still match on the name. The name is still what we use for. But we've added a default field. So this field is something that can tell WSL which distribution to install if you just type a distribution flavor. So for instance, if you'd run WSL-install Ubuntu, the version with default equals true is the one that would get installed. So this means that distribution maintainers can then control which version of their distribution is going to be installed by default. And then we have HTTPS links to the actual distributions as tarballs to be installed. So this is much simpler and requires a lot less work for distribution maintainers to actually add their distributions here. So taking all of this into account, we can talk about the new way to install WSL distributions. And before going more into details, one thing I want to make super clear is that existing MSIX store-based distributions are still supported. You can still install store-based distribution after the transition to tar-based distribution has happened. You can still run distribution that you've previously installed, and we have no plan to stop supporting that. Just want to make that extremely clear. All command lines that worked before this change will still work after. So this is the WSL install command line. So we can see that we've added some new command line argument. We've added location, which allows you to select where you want your new installation to be actually stored, and --name. So with --name, you can actually change the name of the distribution that's going to be installed. And more importantly, this means that you can install the same version of a distribution as many times as you like. So you can do something like this now. You can install a custom, you can install Ubuntu in a custom location and name it however you'd like.
So I can install straight to my D drive now?
Yeah, if you'd like to.
Finally, right.
And you can also install directly from a tar file with WSL-install-from file. We've also added a new way to change the default user for distribution. Before, every distribution entry point, we cannot do it in their own way. But now, with WSL-manage set default user, you can, with one generic command line, select which user you want the distribution to be started with. And this command line would work with tar-based distribution as well as MSIX distribution. So this will work, whatever distribution you have installed, this will always work. So looking at this, the benefits of this new infrastructure are direct HTTPS download for all distributions. So this means that if you're in a situation where, let's say, the Microsoft Store is disabled by company policy, you will still be able to use WSL-install to install distributions. Something you're going to get back soon in a demo. You can now automate WSL distribution in a much easier way. So before, when you would install a distribution, the first thing that would happen would be a username and a password prompt. We've changed that in such a way that when a script calls into a WSL distribution, we will skip this interactive part, meaning that it becomes much easier to automate the configuration of WSL distributions. Now, IT admins can create their own distributions and distribute them within their company with custom manifest. We'll get back to that later. And with the custom name and location support, you have much greater control on how WSL actually configures a distribution and how to use them. So having said all of that, let's look into a demo. OK, so here I have a machine with the latest version of WSL. And what I'm going to do is WSL-list-online. And this is going to give me a list of all the distributions that can be installed. Thank you, Greg. So all of these are distributions that I can install with WSL-install. So if, for instance, I wanted to install, let's say, the latest version of Debian, I would do WSL-install Debian. And I would name this, let's say, my distro. And so what's happening here is that WSL has looked up the entry for Debian in the distribution manifest, and it has downloaded the tar file, and now it has installed it. So we can see the difference in behavior there. I am not prompted for username or password as part of the distribution installation. So I could start it, and actually the terminal output is telling me what the command line is to start this distro. But let's say that I was in a script, and I wanted to pre-configure this distro. So what I would do would be WSL-d my distro to start it. But let's say that I wanted to install a package. What I would do would be something like this. I would update the package cache. And then I would chain this with, let's say, apt install curl-y. And as we execute this command line, the most important part to realize is that I am not being asked for any interactive input, no username and password prompt. And all of this is running without any actions from me. So now that I've done this, I can actually start my distributions because it is not configured. So if I do WSL-d my distro.
Right. You could also run it from the start menu too, right?
Yes, that's right. I have a new icon here, my distro, with the correct icon for the Debian flavor that I have installed. So when I run it for the first time now, because this is an interactive shell that I've asked WSL to open for me, I actually get greeted with the username and password prompt. So I'm going to create a new user account here. And now I am inside my WSL distro. And now I'm here. Let's look a bit about how this new metadata that we've added actually works. So if I go to /etc and I open this new file that we've introduced called wsl-distribution.conf, and I look at what's inside, I can see that this is where the metadata for the WSL distribution is now stored. So we have the ubi command. So ubi means out-of-box experience. So this command is what gets executed when you open an interactive shell for the first time in WSL. We're going to look at what this does in a minute. We have the default name, which is the default name for the distribution when the user does not pass --name. We have the default UID, and we have the shortcut, which is what is used in this start menu entry here.
And so this one we just created for this demo. There'll be an official Debian version of the tar-based distro coming later.
That's right. And distribution are going to transition to tar-based as distribution maintainer publish the new versions in the new distribution manifest that we have online. So if you remember this ubi script, I can actually look at what's happening, and I can open it inside my distribution. So this, if you remember, what username do you want, which password do you want, this is what powered this experience. So you can see it's a relatively simple bash script. And the important thing to realize here is that this is all Linux code. This is a standard bash script, and it makes it much, much easier for a distribution maintainer to create experiences like this. Like in the previous model, this would be implemented in a Windows executable, which would require a lot of extra knowledge. This is Linux-centered. But just to make it clear, if you want to, you can still use Windows executables to create these out-of-box experiences. But now you can also create like Linux, binaries or scripts, whatever is executable inside WSL, which is of course Windows and Linux binaries. So this is what you can do with tar-based WSL distributions. And just to go over the top, let's say that I wanted to make a script to configure my WSL distribution for me. Let's say that I wanted to install some packages or create some configuration file. Well, I have a very simple PowerShell script that's going to do that for me. So this is going to install a new distribution. It's going to call it automated setup distro, and it's going to pre-install curl for me. And if I just run it, and if I just call this script here, we can see that it's going to run the entire time without any input from me. And when it's going to be done, I'm going to have a WSL distribution tailored for my usage pre-installed. So this is what I meant earlier when I said that automation support is much better with tar-based distributions. Now it's designed to work with automation. And now this distribution has been installed. This one I'm actually going to start it from the start menu. And I have this new automated setup distro. And I can see I get prompted with the username and password prompts, just like the last one. And if I create this, I can see that curl is pre-installed. And I did not have to do that manually. So this is what you get with tar-based distribution. This is much better from like a user perspective and a maintainer perspective because things are just easier. Okay, let's go back to the slide. And let's talk about how this new infrastructure makes things easier for IT admins as well. So we are introducing 2 new registry keys for WSL to customize the catalog of available distributions with WSL --install. So the design behind this is that we want to make it very simple for an IT admin to create a custom company-tailored distribution. So you can pre-install packages, line of business applications, you can configure networking, firewall rules, anything like this inside your distribution, then export it and have it installable by users in your company by just running WSL --install. So we have 2 new registry keys, distribution list URL, which is a registry key you can use to override the manifest. So the reason behind this is because, as Craig was talking about earlier, you might want to restrict the list of distributions that are compliant with company policy. So Craig showed you how you can use the Intune WSL plugin to monitor this, but with this manifest, you can simply remove distributions that are not compliant with company policy from the list of installable distribution with WSL --install. So this allows you a very good level of control over this distribution manifest. And you have another option, which is distribution list URL append, and you can use this to extend the catalog of installable distributions. So let's say that you created a custom distribution for your company. You could just tell users, hey, just run WSL --install, and WSL will do the rest. And with WSL-distribution.conf, you can customize the out-of-box experience. You can add more prompts. You can write more messages. And actually, let's look at what this would look like in practice. So here, I'm going to imagine a scenario where I am an IT admin for a company called 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀, and I would like to create a custom distribution so I can make it easy for my users to access it and install it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install a new version of Debian, and I'm going to call this, let's say, 𝗦𝗲𝗀 template. So I'm going to use this distribution as a base. I'm going to install some applications in it. I'm going to customize it. And then I am going to export it and put it in the manifest and show how users can install it.
So you're going to do the full end-to-end setup for that live?
Yes.
OK, brave.
And this demo does depend on networking, but it's been working pretty well so far. But we'll see how this will go. And if it doesn't work all the way, you'll know it's a real demo. So I've just started this distribution, so I'm going to create a username that I'm going to use to configure everything. And I am going to elevate because I have to modify some important files. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to WSL-distribution.conf, WSL-distribution.conf, and I'm going to modify this value to fit my use case better. So for instance here, I want to name this distribution by default, let's say 𝗦𝗲𝗀 distro. I'm going to change this. I'm just going to change this, but I could also change the shortcut icon, and I could make changes to the UB command. Anything here I can easily change. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to open the existing UB script that we've seen earlier, and I'm going to add an extra message, and it's going to be, let's say, welcome to 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗶𝗫 distro. Please read the company WSL policy, and we're going to give some link here.
Right. And so this doesn't even have to be just an echo. It could be calling into, maybe a company database and getting more information or anything like that, right?
Yeah, it could be, what's your company email, which organization unit are you. Like, this is a script, so you can do anything you want. This is a simplified example, so I can actually do it live without too much complexity. So now this is done. I'm going to leave my distribution shell. And before exporting it, I am going to run one last command in this distribution. So I'm going to do WSL-D 𝗦𝗲𝗀 templates, and I'm going to run this command as root, and I'm going to delete the user account I have just created. The reason for that is because I want my users to create their own account. I don't want my account with the password I just created to be exported there.
Unless everyone's Pierre.
Yeah,
then you're fine.
That'd be funny. So now this distribution is ready. I have configured it the way I want. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to add one last thing. I'm going to pre-install Git, because let's say that this is a distribution that is for developers. So I'm going to pre-install Git. This also depends on the internet, but I think we should
great.
We should be fine. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. And so the idea is, since I know that users in my company are going to want to clone repository, like you've shown earlier, it's much easier if Git is already installed. I can just tell them, hey, just paste these commands. You don't have to pre-install anything. OK, so now my distribution is ready. So I'm going to export it. So I'm going to do WSL-export 𝗦𝗲𝗀 template.
-template.
Thank you.
I got you.
And then I am going to give it a tar file, which is, yes, here we go, 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀.tar.wsl. You can see we've added a nice status progress to show you how much has been exported. And this tar.wsl extension is not mandatory, but it's an extension that we use to indicate this is not just any tar, it's a WSL distribution. So I have exported this 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀.tar.wsl. This is my pre-configured distribution. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hash it. And once I have this hash value here, I'm going to copy this in this manifest I've created for this purpose. I'm going to replace this hash. This is for security. This is to prevent supply chain attacks. And this is a manifest I have created that I'm going to use in my company. And this manifest adds a new entry in this modern distribution field here. And it's going to add this 𝗦𝗲𝗀 distribution flavor. And here I have the 𝗦𝗲𝗀 distro that I've just created. I have pre-filled everything with the name, the default, and the URL points to a local file on my machine. So this is for convenience. If you put file, // in front of your path, it just tells WSL this is a local file. Don't try to download it. It makes development on the WSL distributions much easier because you don't have to spin up a web server. So I have just updated the hash here, and what I need to do is I'm going to write to the registry key I was talking about earlier, distribution list URL append. And when I do that, I have told WSL to extend the catalog with the entry that I have just added. So once I have done this, I can do WSL-list-online. I can see that now 𝗦𝗲𝗀 distro is the first entry that pops up because it's been overridden by this new manifest. And as a user, I can do something like WSL-install 𝗦𝗲𝗀 distro, and I'm going to call this my company distro. And as this is happening, WSL has seen, we can see here, WSL, the distribution is provided by an override manifest, so this is not part of the official WSL distribution list. And we can see that this distribution has been installed, and it's giving me the command line to start it here. And when I start it, I can do WSL-D 𝗦𝗲𝗀 distro. And as I start it,
you changed the name.
That's right.
My company distro.
My company distro. Yeah, this is how you can tell that this is live. And as I start this distribution, I am granted by the out-of-box script. But this time there's a change because my IT admin has added this message for me. And this is what you can do with this. You can re-customize the behavior of distro from install to usage. And because I am a developer, the first thing I want to do is to use Git, and my IT admin pre-install Git for me. It's immediately available.
So it's a much easier way to put someone right on the golden path right, on using your provision distro, et cetera.
Yeah, because you're the IT admin at the company, so you know how people use the distribution, so you can save all of this time at scale and pre-configure everything for your company's network specifically. And it goes beyond that, because let's say that I don't want to use the command line. I could just double-click on this contoso.tar.wsl, and that's actually just enough for WSL to recognize that this is a WSL distro. And you can see how fast that was. I just double-clicked on it. And because I did not provide an override name, now I have a Contoso distro in my start menu by just double-clicking. I did not even have to run any command for that to happen. So this is what you get if you name your file .tar.wsl. Okay, let's go back to the slide, and let's kind of summarize what we've talked about today. So WSL distributions are now much easier to create, install, and configure. You can ship a Linux distribution with only Linux code. It became much, much simpler. You can much easily automate configuration of your distribution by creating commands that will open non-interactive shells, and WSL will recognize that and will not show the out-of-box experience. But just to make this super, super clear, MSIX distributions are still supported. We are not planning to make any changes there, and you can still use and install distributions like you did before, even if they don't transition to tar-based. IT admin can very easily create and distribute custom WSL distribution inside our company, and it's as easy as creating a JSON file and a registry key on the machine to add new entries on top of the WSL -list output. So we've just talked about all of these improvements, but there's more. We are very excited to announce that Red Hat is coming to WSL. So you will soon be able to use WSL-install to install Red Hat Enterprise Linux on recent versions of WSL.
Yeah, we're very happy to work with the Red Hat team to bring this finally. So very excited about it.
So we've talked about a lot of new things for IT admins, for distribution maintainers, and for WSL users, but there's more. Craig, I believe you have a video from the London Stock Exchange for us.
Yeah, so we had the opportunity to sit down with the London Stock Exchange group and ask them about how their WSL usage is going and adoption is going. And we chose a 1-minute clip of this just to give a highlight of it, and we'll chat more about it after.
Rehan, I am the Intune administrator. I'm the lead engineer at London Stock Exchange Group.
Jacques, and I'm the head of digital work strategy. It's a mouthful for me, and effectiveness. So I focus on people productivity.
So what were the challenges that you faced when you were putting all of this together for your developers and Windows 365, and how did you circumvent that?
The cyber policies and cyber requirements was one of our biggest ones. Sure. But understandably so, we're a heavily regulated environment. Things like making sure we know exactly who's using what, exactly how many people have a Linux device. There wasn't a solution in place, and we spoke to Craig, and I was very surprised to how quickly we had something like that implemented within Intune natively, which didn't exist before.
So the Microsoft partnership has been very positive.
Oh, yes.
Awesome. So yeah, shout out to the LSEG group. It was awesome working with them. And we have a bunch of other announcements that we really want to quickly go over in the last few minutes of the session. WSL has more latest improvements that go beyond just IT admin and new architecture. We're always improving WSL, and we have a new WSL settings experience that is now generally available. We have a WSL getting started experience that will help orient new users who are using the Windows Subsystem for Linux the first time. And we have a bunch of general improvements like memory improvements, custom kernel modules, and more. And this, really my favorite part about WSL is it works great with tons of different areas inside of Microsoft. So in that example video with the London Stock Exchange group, they're using Windows 365 to power their developer workforce. WSL just works inside of that. It also works inside of other tools like Microsoft DevBox and VS Code. And let's jump to my screen, and we'll take a look at some of this new stuff in action. So I'm here on my desktop, and I can just open up the Windows app, and I can open up my DevBox in the cloud. I've already done this, so we don't have to wait for it to connect. And now I'm in the cloud in a DevBox, and I can go ahead and run WSL, the past terminal that I had exited, and that's OK. And so I can start up my WSL distro and interact with it, so that's the startup time, and use it just like I would for anything else. And now that I'm running WSL for the first time, if I was a user, I would be able to get the WSL Getting Started experience. So this is available here. And let me full screen this. It looks like this. If I go to the Windows Subsystem settings and hit Welcome to WSL, I get this screen up on my machine. And you can see I get a welcome to WSL. I get an overview of the different features that are available, as well as the different integrations. So we hope that this really just helps align someone who's new. And if they're getting dropped into the command line for the first time, it gives them an overview of, hey, you can use this to accelerate, use your GPU inside of this without any other setup. And here's how you can get started. Or you can use Docker Desktop with this seamlessly. And here's how you can get started with that. And so we can jump back to, I'm going to go ahead and run the WSL settings, and we can take a look at this app. We added a graphical interface to interact with different settings in WSL, so you can control how many processors are assigned to it, your memory, as well as enabling or disabling optional features like GUI apps, how we do memory reclaim in WSL, and more. And so let's see a real example of developing AI using the Microsoft DevBox and WSL. So in this case, I'm going to open up this project with VS Code. I'm going to run code dot. And I have a pretty simple, in quotes, sample project here that is going to help take audio and write out the translation for it in text. That's my goal. And so what I can do is open up a file. Let's do this one here. And we can listen to what this audio is saying.
안녕하십니까? 저는 김치찌개 먹고 싶습니다.
Cool. So that is some Korean phrase, and we want to say, hey, what is it saying behind the scenes? So we have just some really simple Python code to make some GUI, and we have a simple code here that is using OpenAI's Whisper model right here, and we're going to translate it. So I'm going to go here and just hit F5 and run this Python file. And while this boots, I want to preemptively apologize if there are any designers in the audience or watching, because I am obviously not one when I create beautiful applications that look like this. But here we have all of our different files. I'm going to click and mark this as, hey, this is Korean. And oh, yeah, live zoom does not work on DevBox, which I think I can fix. I shouldn't have hit that. Let me try and fix this one more time. And let me try one more tool. And we're going to kill Zoom It. Sorry, Zoom It. I love you. But your live view does not work on DevBox, which is OK. I killed the online version. All right, we're going to redo one more time and try to do this. Quit, and we'll try one more time. But once it's done translating, we'll be able to see what the output is and go through it. So while this boots up, I'm just going to talk through the last few points that we have for WSL. And you can see the progress of it. And so really the goal of it is, hey, we have a lot of integration with different points for enterprises. You have the ability to use Entra ID. You have the ability to use Intune to manage it. It works great with services like DevBox. In this case, we'll file a bug with the Zoom It team for live preview on this setup. And it also allows you to do things like you can grab CPU resources from it automatically, GPU as well. In this case, the example that we're showing is using GPU specifically. And there we go. I'm back. I have my beautiful UI again. And I'm going to hit transcribe. And we're going to see what's happening behind the scenes. So we're using CPU to power this specific example. And we're going to start stressing the CPU in our DevBox. But of course, GPU pass-through works through WSL as well. And we are live taking that text. We are transcribing it into English here. And so that output, that WAV file that I played, really does say, hello, I would like to eat some kimchi stew, which is pretty cool. And that was how instant it was. And so if you have developers and they are using remote environments or they're using DevBoxes and they're using the Microsoft stack, well, they get access to the Linux stack for free. And that is an overview of everything that we talked about today. If you would like to learn more, you can always reach out to us on GitHub if you have technical issues at Microsoft/WSL on github.com. The docs are ak.ms/WSL docs. You can reach me on Twitter at twitter.com/CraigALoewen. As well, you can learn more about the Intune integration, and Entra ID integration has a private preview link at the bottom if you'd like to sign up for that. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we hope the rest of your night is awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.